So we've got John, pronouns are he, him, in Canada. Would like to see what we think about the Creation Museum in Kentucky. How you doing, John?
Hello, John. Skeptick, cross-examiner. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good. So I was wondering, what do you think of the Ark encounter in Kentucky? I want your true opinions.
I can only speak for myself. I've never been, and I wouldn't really like to say what I think of it, having not been inside the building or boat.
I'll echo that. I will say that I have not been, and I like to withhold my opinion until I have some evidence and facts. I have looked at their website. I have heard what their ticket prices are. I think it seems to be based on a story that mankind for centuries has been trying to prove is real and has not been able to, and that the vast majority of scientific evidence shows a lot of problems with the story. Now, I've never been a big fan of pointing out all the problems, the penguins walking to the Middle East and the lack of evidence in the geological column, because a person who truly believes this stuff can just magic that all away. Well, God took care of all of that. So to me, I don't like getting bogged down into those conversations because it's sort of a what if game. I think that the time to believe something is when you've been provided sufficient evidence. And as far as I can tell, and I'm open to being corrected on this, over the centuries that people have been trying to collect evidence of this story, we don't have any that supports it. And we have a bunch of evidence that shows that it would have taken a multitude of miracles to pull off. So given that, I think that there's no evidence for what they're displaying there. And that makes me sad because it means there's a lot of people wasting a lot of their family's saved money on a story that they don't even need to still be Christian. They don't need to believe in this. I know lots of Christians who are like, that's just a metaphor. That's just a lesson. That didn't literally happen. And then they can move on with their lives. So that's sort of my take on it.
What about you, John?
Oh,
have we lost John? Oh, there he is.
I will admit that it's an impressive building. Whether or not it's actually true is a different story. But I'll let you know. You see the Bill Nye Canham debate 10 years ago.
Right.
I do remember that one. That was the one where they asked the question of both people, Bill Nye and Ken Ham. For people who don't know, Ken Ham, I believe, still is involved in the operation. He created the Ark encounter. And during the debate, the question was presented to both of them: what would it take to change your mind? And Bill Nye said it would take evidence of this sort of veracity, all of these different things. And Bill and Ken Ham said, nothing. I will never change my mind, which is a dead giveaway to the fact that you're not dealing with a serious interlocutor. There's not somebody who's interested in using any sort of widely recognizable system of determining truth to adjust his views. He just wants to believe what he believes.
Right. You should be a lawyer.
Oh, really?
Yeah. The way you analyze things, it's very, very lawyer. And I live with one, so yeah.
I call myself a recovering attorney.
Oh, there you go. Did that help, John?
It does help. It does help. But I just like to know, what if tomorrow we Ham or someone just found some overwhelming evidence proving the Ark and the flood was true? How would that change the world?
That's a great question. I think the premise of the question, overwhelming evidence, means we would then accept it as true. So what if it was true? What if and a lot of the devil's in the details. What can we prove? That there was a boat and that it had a lot of animals on it? Or are we saying we have enough evidence to say it rained for 40 days and it flooded the entire earth and all but one family was killed and they had to have sex with each other to repopulate the whole planet? That tends to go against genetic data. But okay, let's say somehow that all is true. Well, then we would accept it. It's a bit of a tautology of a question to say, what if there was so much evidence where we had to accept it? What would you do? Well, then we would accept it and then we would seek to explain it. I don't think you're ever going to get to the point to say that because there was a boat and there was a family and there was a massive die-off, therefore God. but you will convince a larger number of people to believe in Christianity, possibly through error, saying, well, because part of this book is true, therefore I believe the whole book. But that's my take. It's kind of it's hard to answer a question because you have to sort of define exactly what, if everybody believed a thing, would everybody believe it? Yes. So does that answer your question?
What does it change? What does it change as well? So, like you say, just proving that the story of the Ark was true. What would that then change for people? Does that automatically make that God real? Would we then accept that God? There's so much more to it than whether or not there was a boat with animals on it. Prove that to be the absolute truth. Okay, there was a God that flooded the world. Now what? Do we have to worship that God? Do we want to worship a God that is, his thing is, you love me or you go to hell? I don't want to follow a being like that, because that's just basic bully behavior. What would it change making that one little bit true?
Yeah, that's the tough question when you say, if it was true, well, what counts as the story? Because part of the story is God did X. Well, that's where I'm saying I don't think you're going to get physical evidence that shows that, because the nature of the story is this is all magicked away. This is all miracle. This is all defying the laws of physics, et cetera. So you just have to accept that part. So if we say the physical evidence of there was a boat, there was a family, there were animals and all that stuff, yeah, I think that more people would probably call themselves Christian, but I think that it would possibly be a logical fallacy. What are your thoughts, John? If you only had the physical parts of that one story, the boat, maybe some genetics that, yeah, we did get down to one family, hypothetically, what we're saying is, what if reality isn't? Because we already have that evidence that didn't happen. But if that was true, do you think that is an open and shut case, or do you think that's an eyebrow raising? That's interesting. We should look into that.
Well, if we do find proof that a flood actually existed, we have to take into account. First we have to ask the question: what natural force could possibly make it rain so hard, so long, that actually flood the world to the point where it covered Mount Everest? What natural phenomenon could that do? That'll lead to further scientific investigation, which would be great for scientists to find out what.
Do you not think that folks have already tried to do that, though?
Of course, they have tried to do that. I'm just saying that in this hypothetical situation, if we found something, we'll have to explain it. Plus, we'll also explain how no one's able to repopulate the Earth. But
we would also have to explain all of the contraindicated evidence, right? We would have to explain away why the ice pack column doesn't show a global flood. We would have to show why the geological column doesn't show a global flood. So it's kind of a hard question to answer. You're basically saying, what if this proved to be true? Well, then we'd have not only the mystery of it proving to be true and trying to find evidence for an explanation, a mechanism for an explanation, but then we would have to go back and say, well, all this other stuff is obviously inconsistent with this answer. Were we wrong about that? This has been peer reviewed to the nth degree. So it's a tricky question to answer. It's a little bit of navel gazing, quite frankly, or fan friction writing. Like, how do we retrofit this story into our current area? What does that get us? Because we know that right now we have no evidence, no physical evidence supporting this story. There have been, if you go look at the Wikipedia article on expeditions to find the Ark and other Ark stories, Christian scientists who investigate everyone have said, nope, not legit. We've never found any evidence. So we have zero evidence supporting the story, except stories in a book. Again, goat herders who from the Bronze Age who didn't know where the sun went when day ended. That's what we have. And on the other side, we have all of this evidence that contradicts that story. So I don't see what purpose it gains us to do a bunch of what ifs. What if God came down and said, hey, you all believe, and gave me enough evidence to believe? Well, then I'd believe, but that's not what's happening. So why should we spend our time wondering about this what if, I guess is my question.
Yeah,
what does it gain us? How does it move the ball forward?
Oh, I guess it doesn't. But here's one question: if Christianity is all false, why do so many people believe in it, and why is Ken Ham and his friends still in business in this age?
Well, if Islam,
I think John can answer that. John,
yeah,
I know. I've heard your calls a lot. Sorry, I just want to jump in. What do you think our answer will be? Why don't you why don't you steel man my position before I even say it? Honestly, and I will try to steel man yours. I will try to give the best explanation from your side. But if you could tell me what my answer would be, I think that would be progress.
Okay, you're going to tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're going to tell me that people want to believe. Okay, you're either going to tell me that A, people have been indoctrinated since birth in this religion, but because their parents, their church, the country you live in, et cetera. Plus, people want to believe, and plus they're invested in this. And as for Ken Ham, he's obviously making money off of this, money off of this. And it's hard for people to let go of a belief, no matter how much proof is given to them. Am I correct, gentlemen?
I think you left out some important parts. I'll give you a C on that one. I think that's progress. You understand, but I think my answer, at least, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, John, are throughout history, humanity has been wrong in massive numbers for a long time. So your question was, if this is false, then why do so many people believe it? That's a logical error. Our argument from popularity. So there was a time in human history where everybody believed the earth was flat. And there was a time where everybody believed that the sun went around the earth. All of these things were, I dare say, close to 100% of humans believed this. That doesn't make it true. And so my answer is, we believe it because that's what we were told, and we haven't had cause or motivation to go and look into it and disprove it to ourselves. So I think the other things play into it. I wouldn't bring up the fact that Ken Ham's making money from it. So I want to correct you on that. I genuinely give him credit for believing what he believes. I think he's wrong, but I think he's a genuine Christian believer, a young earth creationist. I think he is. I think he's wrong. I think that he, like many other people, compartmentalize their brain, and anything to do with religion, they don't hold to the same standards of evidence as the rest of the world. And I think that explains that. So I think my answer would be a little more complicated, but I do give you credit, John, for trying to understand me. I'd love to hear what our John has to say as well, and then we can try to steel man your position for the caller.
I just like to add on a little something extra. I take a different stance on it, although I agree with what CE was saying. You could also say, so you're basically saying, if Christianity isn't true, why do so many people believe it? Well, if Islam isn't true, why do so many people believe in it? If Hinduism isn't true, then why do so many people believe in it? The number of people believing in something doesn't demonstrate the truth of it. But if it did, would that then not mean that I could say that I believe that there's a cosmic rainbow giraffe that poops the universe into existence? And if I can convince enough people to also accept that, would that then make it true in your eyes? Because I'm getting a number of people to accept that the cosmic giraffe pooped the universe into existence.
No, that's not how logic works. But we humans, we like to. Okay, let's put it this way: we get into our fiction, and for instance, hundreds of people go to London every day to 221 Baker Street just to see the fictional. Even though it exists, they want to see the fictional Sherlock Holmes. That's how superstitious we are.
I think it's my turn to try to steel man your position, John. Yeah. So I'm an attorney, and I need to be able to see other people's sides, other people's arguments. Correct me if I'm wrong, but your argument would go as follows. Your best argument would be along the lines of this. Hey, this religion's been around for thousands of years. You know, Christianity for about 2,000 years, the Old Testament long before that. People gain value out of it, and it doesn't seem to do too many bad things, and the good that it does outweighs the bad. And this many people must be onto something. And I'm not sure, I'm familiar with your call, so I'm not sure you'll agree with this part, but you can also add on, the part that John the Skeptic said of, hey, then why aren't the Hindus right if there are that many, or the Muslims they're that many right? You could even on and say, well, they're all right because they're all identifying with some higher power. And so if you take the religious versus the non-religious in the planet, it far outweighs the vote, so to speak, goes way in favor of religious belief. Is that where you would go with your argument? Do I understand you correctly?
To a certain extent, but what I'm in favor of is an honest intellectual investigation. That's what I'm looking for.
I think everybody's after that, though. I think we all want to have like the most, at the end of the day, the most intellectual. Some people like me will say stupid things just to, to be stupid. But we do, at the end of the day, want the truth, and we want to get to the truth the right way. So I think we're all in agreement there.
Yes, we are.
Yeah.
I'm glad we agree.
Now, how do we do that? What method have humans come up with that determines or measures or comes up with a model of reality that ends up being true, that can be tested and shows the right results time and time again? What method do we have that does that? Can we agree on that method?
Science.
Okay, so we agree on that there is a method. Now, if I'm going to steel man your position again, you might say, but there's an element of God that is outside the reach of science. Do I understand? Is that something that you might say?
No, I don't believe that at all.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough. So I agree with you. I think that it is interesting that so many people believe so many wrong things for so long in such large numbers. It reminds me, I don't know if anybody's ever watched one of my favorite shows is The Orville. Seth MacFarlane did a homage to Star Trek that's rumored to have the 4th season coming out soon. And one of the episodes in the 1st season is they go down to a planet where everybody has a little badge on their shirt and with an up arrow and a down arrow. And anytime somebody did something you don't like, you pressed the badge and gave them a down vote. And anytime you did something you liked, you went on an upvote. And it was a crime in that society to have 10 million or more downvotes, and you would be re-educated, you would be brainwashed. But the line from the show I'm thinking of is there's a debate going on TV about what to teach in the classroom. And somebody said, well, the economy, is functioned like this, and that's because of this. That's a fact. We voted on it last year. The point being, all of their facts in their classrooms were determined by a vote. And the whole point of that is that's ridiculous. We don't vote as to what the color of the sky is. We don't vote as to what the rate of gravitational acceleration is. So that's where I come from when I hear somebody say, hey, Christianity's been so popular, religion in a whole is so popular, it must be right. And I'm like, yeah, it's a fact. We all voted on it. That's where we come from. I hope you can see how that doesn't jive with us. It doesn't convince us. Does that make sense? I mean, does my opinion make sense? You don't necessarily have to agree with it.
Right.
Yes, it does make sense. But what I really want to know is to answer the question, to ask the same question Ken Ham was asked. What, if anything, would change your mind?
For me, it would just be like evidence that convinces me, and I think for most people, it will just be what convinces that individual person. And so far, I don't accept anything that's been presented. I just don't see it working out. So for me, it will just be something that makes sense to me. I don't know about CE. He works with evidence. He's a blooming lawyer.
Yeah, if you'll indulge me a little story that I think I go back to that addresses this question, because what this question boils down to is, from a theistic standpoint, you want to test and see, what you're trying to do is see, are we entrenched just like Ken Ham? Are we just dedicated to saying, no, there's no God no matter what? And the answer is no, generally. I believe that at some point, if there were a God, there would be a way for that God to convince me. By all definitions of gods I've heard, at least in the Christian area, the God would be that powerful. So he's choosing not to convince me. All right. So that's my basic answer. the short story I want to tell that sort of speaks to this is when I was 39 years old, just before 4 days before my 40th birthday, I was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. Long story short, I had to have about a 16-hour operation after a lot of radiation therapy and chemotherapy and all that sort of stuff. During my recovery, I was in the ICU, and there was a nurse there that was trying to steal my property. They were giving me nasty looks. They were plotting to take my property, and they would try to grab my stuff from time to time. And I told my dear friend, she is a physician, about this. And she went and read my chart, went and consulted with my attending physician. They came in and said, yeah, your heart rate wasn't coming down. We put you on this alternate pain med. We're taking you off of that right now because you're hallucinating.
Oh.
They took me off that pain med, and with 1 hour, I realized, holy shit, like I would have sworn under oath that this person wanted to kill me. And I go back to that time and time and time again, because when I get into these discussions with Christians and they say, what if God wrote on the moon, you know, John 3:14 or whatever
Right.
it is, right?
Yeah.
And I would
3:16.
say something like, well, I need to make sure I wasn't hallucinating, or it wasn't aliens, or it wasn't whatever. I cannot describe how real this experience was to me. And it's almost to the point where I'm like, everybody should have a hallucinogenic experience, controlled environment growing up to realize how wrong your brain can be. And another story from being an attorney, eyewitness testimony, your own perception of reality is crap. We are very, very, very bad at seeing a thing, running it through our model, and understanding what is really happening. So that's my long way of saying what evidence would convince me. It's the standard answer that you're going to hear from most people, which is, I don't know, but a God that's as powerful as most people describe would be able to convince me. But please keep in mind that when you do the what ifs and the hypotheticals, don't rule out hallucination. Just a few milligrams of a certain substance in your blood can make you see and believe all sorts of weird things.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my answer.
Okay, so saying that you don't know, but God should know, that's reminiscent of Matt Dillahunty. But anyway, I'm glad you guys spoke to me. I understand your position. Have a good night, gentlemen. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. I really appreciate you being direct and straightforward with us. It was a good chat.